That is Simply Focus with Elfie Chani and Dominic Gilda.
Welcome back to the Simply Focus podcast, The Good Life Approach, your podcast for life and joy and ease. My name is Dominic Goda.
I'm Elfie Chani. Hi there.
We have the honor to talk to Haesun Moon today via Zoom. But before we come to that, we're curious. How did the challenge of last week go? We had Janet Bavlis here with us, and we talked about the action that is in the interaction. She invited you to look at the conversation and find out what is going on in the interaction. So we're curious, how did you do that? How did it work? What did you find out? Please comment, let us know on www.sfontour.com/simplyfocuspodcast and then go to episode number 10.
Well, hi, Haesun. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Well, hello.
So, Haesun, you're an international solution-focused teacher and speaker, teaching coaching at the Toronto University, and you're co-director of the Canadian Centre for Brief Coaching.
Oh dear, yes. For now, I guess so.
Well, you're working with individuals, teams, and organizations, and among others, developed the Language of Hope, which is a program which allows people in the healthcare system to have meaningful conversations with their patients. I hope I put that correctly in your sense.
Yes, I just love that. It's better than how I say it. Yes.
Well, and this program is actually implemented in all hospitals in Toronto, right?
It is being implemented, yes.
Amazing. So we will talk about that later.
Okay.
And you're also super passionate about microanalysis.
I am.
Which makes us even more excited to have you here. So to connect the last podcast to what practical implications it has, as we know you're applying all these microanalysis ideas in a really brilliant way in your work. And you're a big dog lover.
I am. Yes, that I can say for sure with confidence.
So once again, thank you so much for being here on Zoom with us today. And we are super excited to talk with you about your precious work today and about solution focus, microanalysis, and whatever will come up.
Yeah, so Haesun, what fascinates you about solution focus?
You know, what fascinates me about solution focused is how simple it sounds, but how sophisticated it actually is. That's what fascinates me. I think for me, when I first learned it, the first day, I thought I got it. So then I went home and practiced. And a year later, I found myself actually teaching people. And 3 years later, I thought I was like expanding the frontier of solution focused. And that's how much I actually didn't know. So the more I get to know, especially as I learned about microanalysis, I just still feel like I feel nervous saying that I studied microanalysis because I just feel like I just know a tiny little piece of a big thing that I got to taste. So as I study it, as I look at my conversations with microanalysis, I am amazed and mesmerized about how sophisticated it actually is. So that's what fascinates me.
And how does microanalysis connect to solution focus for you?
You know, for me, I am primarily adult educator. So I think about and I dream about and I write about how people learn or how people teach. And microanalysis, I think, provides a really precious tool for me as an educator to be able to teach this content called solution focused or dialogue or language of hope, whatever you might call it. Teach in a way that people are becoming observers of their own work. And that's what's so significant about microanalysis in my work.
Wow. So what difference did microanalysis make for you as a teacher, for you as a person, I think, just seeing you?
Oh, I love it. You know, that's a very good question, Elfie. You know, I remember it was third or fourth year that I was teaching master classes. And then during the master class, people bring their work and showcase their work. And of course, after they do life coaching or showcase their work, they look to me and say, so, and they look at me expecting some sort of feedback. So the way that I provide feedback was, oh, that was good. It was this. And it was very global and impressionistic in a way that I provide feedback. And I did actually have some hard time providing some feedback around, oh, I'm not sure about this part. Now, once I actually learned about microanalysis, so in that case, I was the teacher or instructor trying to put structure into somebody else. And then students were looking at me for those answers or guidance. When I learned microanalysis, what was so fascinating was the first year that I learned it, I came back and I ran my masterclass. And then a masterclass is the last class of all the program. So people are done. And then one afternoon, the very last day, the very last afternoon, I decided to just introduce the concept of microanalysis. And somehow, when I asked people in about 3 months' time, and I said, what was most useful about the program? Almost 90% of them, they said, the very last part of the very last day of the program. And I thought, what? What was so useful about it? And then somehow it gives them the language to look at their work in a different way without the instructor being there. And seeing people becoming comfortable with looking at their own work. And now what's happening is people are so used to taping their own work. And then by the time they come to me, they've already done the first rendition of criticism of their own work. So then when they come, all I need to do is kind of encourage them using their videotape as an evidence of their progress. And when they say, well, I'm struggling with this part, what do I do? Simply, I ask them to kind of show me, not talk to me about it conceptually, but show me. When they say, well, client was resistant. Okay, I don't know what that means. Show me.
I love that.
The conversation becomes a lot more descriptive, and there is that show me part. I mean, I will say learning about microanalysis was the turning point for me.
When we met in Frankfurt last summer at the SF World Conference, you told us this nice story about how you start your courses now with microanalysis and with people just without knowing anything, asking questions and then seeing them and seeing the differences that makes. Can you tell us about this and how this enhances learning?
You know, I just had a call with a student who is just graduating, and I introduced microanalysis since that time as the last course. And then the following year, I thought, why don't I actually put it in the middle of the program and see what happens? And then I put it in the middle of the program, and people had no problem learning it. I mean, it's not like microanalysis the way that, Janet's team is doing. It's a simplified version of it, right? So the following year, we did a little bit of experiment, and we put microanalysis right in the day one of people who are coming to learn coaching. And we didn't call it microanalysis. And what I invited them to do, students to do, is, okay, before we get started, please have a coaching conversation. Whatever you call coaching, I need you to have a conversation and videotape it. And I usually tell them, please do whatever you think is coaching. And I hope that you make lots of mistakes, because the more mistakes that you make, the better, because you will look back later on and you will see a greater progress if you have a lot of mistakes. So we're introducing baseline as their day one coaching dialogue. And throughout the program, they are videotaping. So by the time they're done the program, they have at least about 5 or 6 videotapes that we can compare so that they can look at their own progress.
Yeah, this is so great. And you know what? After you introduced us to the way how you do it at the conference in Austria from the Austrian Solution Circle, Wolfgang Geiswinkler from the Network Ost and myself and the group of people, actually, we tried that. And we recorded a session where I was the client and we had the other people asking questions. And we had an hour time and we had space to look at one question, basically, and one answer. But this was so awesome, because what we realized is we watched the tape and some thought like, wow, this is such a solution-focused answer, even though I thought I didn't give a solution-focused answer at all. And then we looked closer and we found how often we could really destroy this conversation by picking up different words, and how we could have created a really horrible, or like at least a dialogue where I was discouraged, and how we can create a dialogue where we encourage our conversation partner. This was so amazing. We really loved that. And I particularly love that you really take the people, so your students' questions, and not just, show something. This was a huge difference for Dominic and myself. When we learned about microanalysis, we started also to put the microanalysis at first in our courses, and we realized people just getting it.
I just love that. Isn't that amazing?
I think the way you do it is even one step further, because you just have the whole expertise with the people, yeah?
I think I just have so much fun experimenting with it because I think I also identify myself as a researcher. A long time ago, maybe like nearly 20 years ago, my first job was working in this neuroscience lab, and it's a virtual reality lab. And I was coding different things on the computer. That was my first real job. So moving from there, kind of looking at how things work, for me, it's always so intriguing to see how things work. So one of the things that I actually do a lot is experimenting with ideas. So when I learn something, it's not about just teaching it, but experimenting it. So as recent as actually 2 months ago, what I experimented with was I asked people in class, it's actually during their master class. And during the master class, people have clients come in, live clients come in. So clients were actually given a small task, and their task was, on a cue card, write down how you would actually answer this question. And they actually wrote it out. So the question was, so how would you know that this was useful as you go back to your life, and typical sort of opening. And then clients wrote what they would actually say in 1 or 2 sentences. And then their task was to start with coach number 1. And then they had about half an hour of coaching session. Then the following day, clients came back and I asked them, you know what, I'm sure you already have made some progress, but let's do an experiment. With the coach number 2, I want you to start at the same place and see where it goes. So we have tapes of same client coming back with the same topic and with a different coach. 2 different coaches take them to a completely different place because that's how conversations work. So I am now analyzing what actually happened there, because what actually happened so that somehow in 15 minutes and half an hour, clients are somewhere that's completely different than where they started, because they started with the same sentence. So, I mean, I'm having fun with it because there's so much more to discover and learn, right?
And it connects so well to the last week's podcast with Janet and really seeing the interaction. Mm-hmm. And you also said that's what Janet also said. I want to see it. I want to see how it works. And
yes,
it's actually, what you see is how interaction works. And that's really great learning accelerator for us.
Mm-hmm. And I think I was reading this book. It's considered as a textbook in coaching. And it opens with a chapter with a little quotation from somebody who's really well known. And he claims that, coaching works, but how it works is a mystery. Now, when I see things like that, I get slightly bothered because somehow, if you don't know how your practice works, I have a little bit of a problem with that. I think how coaching works or how dialogue works is not a mystery. It's not as ambiguous as people make it sound to be. Maybe if you make it kind of mysterious, it has more added perceived value, but that's not the point. But microanalysis, for me, really made what we call co-construction so visible. You can see it. And in adult education, when we talk about transformative learning, there's an article called What Form Transforms? And there are a lot of conceptual theories out there. Motivation transforms, this transforms. But how do you know that? Microanalysis makes those things visible in my work. And I can't have enough of it.
I really love what you're saying. Like, it's not mystical. And I think it's also important to demystify the work we do, because it makes it accessible for people, and it makes it not only accessible, but it makes it kind of learnable for everyone. And like Dominic and my passion truly is to bring solution focused into the world and to show people that it makes difference in any kind of interaction we have, in every conversation we have, by deliberately choosing our focus. And with microanalysis, we can really show how this goes. And it's not like something where you have to do like some analytical work or like whatever, like, this esoterical things, but it can be seen, it can be shown, and we just can do it. and train it. And then it's like just practicing, like when you learn riding a bike, when you learn swimming, when you learn whatever it is. And I truly think that this is something we should learn in school as we learn grammar, or even it's more important, like it is grammar, but it's like a different kind of looking on grammar, right?
Yeah. For me, I always think of how I learned English as a second language. Because when I came here, I didn't speak a word of English, and I was 17. So it was quite disorienting. So the way that I learned language is probably from a textbook mostly. So I went to school, and then I was in ESL, and I learned from textbooks. And the way that they actually show you how dialogue works is examples of sequence. So I remember that particular day because I am just naturally social. I like people, like, how people are.
Like dogs.
Like dogs. And I just didn't have the language to be able to connect with people. So I felt slightly trapped. And then I remember that day I opened this textbook and there it was, the greeting sequence. So greeting sequence goes as, person A says, "Hi, hello, my name is Haesun. How are you?" And then, of course, B in the textbook is supposed to say, "I'm fine, thank you, and you." And then the good A will then take it and say, "I'm fine, thank you." And that's the sequence, isn't it? So I learned it. I now know how to actually greet somebody. Totally excited. I went to my class and I happened to have this guy that I was interested in that I couldn't communicate with. And then now I know how to greet him. So I sat beside him and I said, "Hello, my name is Haesun. How are you?" I was practicing that line from the ESL class to the math class. Like I said it like 20 times in my head and it came out perfectly. And then of course he was supposed to respond this way so that I can then say, "I'm fine, thank you." So I'm waiting for him to respond. Like, "I'm fine, thank you, and you." But he didn't say that. He's 17. So he looked at me and he said, "What's up?" Okay, so I was so confused. I mean, what's wrong with him? I mean, he should follow the textbook. So that was my experience of learning a greeting sequence from a textbook and not working in real life. And quite frankly, when I see some coaching, that reminds me of that experience because I think a lot of coaches follow the textbook, but our clients don't. Yes. So sometimes people are not really carefully listening to what is being said so that they can respond to that, but they are just generating more questions and questions. And I think there is a slight misunderstanding about solution-focused coaching or dialogue being a question-based intervention. Whereas it's not question and answer session. It's actually very natural exchange of responses that sometimes happens all at the same time and sometimes happens in sequence. So many times I think about it because I remember the first few years of my teaching, my students came out to be lovely questioners, memorizing all the questions in the coaching process cards like solution-focused parrots. So I remember that, and meeting microanalysis completely transformed that. So then now people are responding, not just questioning.
Yeah, with the video, they're really learning from real life and their real experiences, and they can go back and look at that again and kind of next time, do something different or do more of what works. And that's really great thing that we also discovered when we did the microanalysis course.
Mm-hmm. And I think really train to focus on the brilliance. And this sounds quite abstract, but if you see a dialogue in written, this is not abstract. You can see the words which are brilliant and which you can pick up in order to move on in a conversation where you co-create a better life or change, which is appreciated. We are talking a lot about language, so I would love, Haesun, to hear more about your language of hope. And you shared this beautiful story with us.
Yes. You know what, actually, Elfie, as you were talking, I was reminded, actually. As Elfie, you're talking about how you're looking at written transcript and how sometimes you're looking at different parts of it. And I'm just reminded of this thing that Jen wrote somewhere in her article. Anyway, she quotes a neuropsychologist, I think, about this illustration of water. When you're studying water, when you're studying a phenomenon, or when you're studying an event. And the illustration of water as a molecule H2O. And the question is, what do you need to study? What is the smallest unit that you need to study? And what they talk about is, if you want to reduce it down to like a tiniest thing, particle, then it will be probably hydrogen and oxygen. And it talks about how hydrogen actually burns, and oxygen is what helps things burn. But when you look at H2O, combine them together, it has none of those qualities. So then the question is, what's the merit of actually breaking it down to smallest elements that you can actually study, because it no longer has the basic features of what water is. In that way, and Jen is talking about how the smallest unit that you need to study in a dialogue is a dialogue. So you cannot just look at one liner and say, oh, this person must be thinking this way. I mean, you cannot do that, because you need to see the dialogue as the smallest unit. And I was so amazed by this illustration. And then I checked the date, and this one was published in 1980s.
Wow.
So I'm just thinking, how much more, I mean, I can't wait for her new book that she talked about that's coming out, because it's so life-changing, and I feel like I am like 30 years behind, you know? Mm-hmm. So I just can't talk enough about how significant this is in people who are in dialogic practices. And I really hope that people just learn about it, because her team made all the resources available, and it's just right there, right? Anyway, I just can't go on, but anywho, there you go.
No, it's great to listen to you. So I could listen forever.
Wow. So, I think, Elfie, to answer the question about language of hope. So language of hope came about because of my own experience working at a hospital. And I was having fun teaching doctors and nurses how to coach. I mean, that's kind of fun thing to do, because they live in this highly diagnostic world. And now they're invited to think in dialogic ways. So I have a lot of fun teaching them. And I remember my family doctor, who was my class, learned how to coach. And then 3 weeks later, I went to see him because my wrist was hurting. And as soon as I sit down, and he just looked at me kind of with like a little bit of nerve, and he says, so what are your best hopes? And then I said, I don't know, my wrist hurts. And then he looks at me and he's like, so suppose you didn't have the pain. And I said, just cut it. Okay? You're going to diagnose me. And I'm here for diagnosis. So I'm having so much fun. People especially in healthcare, just kind of turning their sort of perspectives around. What does it mean to diagnose? And where is that space for dialogue? And I was inspired by Sarah Healing's work on how do you find the biomedical information and person-centered information in the same narrative. So I've been talking about that with doctors and nurses and other practitioners at the hospital until one day, it was actually later in 2016, in Canada, the medical assistance in dying, called MAID process, became available and legalized in June 2016. And what was so interesting was people who are in medicine or nursing, they were trained by their colleges to how to respond to patients who are inquiring about the MAID process. So they're trained because patients are going to ask about it, in theory. But in practice, what was happening was they are not the first ones the patients were talking to necessarily. The first people that they were speaking about their wish to die were volunteers who bring them lunches, cleaners who come and clean their room every day, because they do have some time to kind of say, hey, how are you, Mrs. Jones, right? So then they were the first ones that got to hear about the patient's inquiry about how to die. So that was rather disruptive, because people felt that, you get so many different responses from volunteers, and some people will say, don't think like that, or, oh, it's a bad thing to think that way. So one of the things that they wanted to do was some sort of algorithm that interprofessional teams can use when patients bring up this topic of medical assistance in dying. How do you actually address it? So I was called in to work with a palliative team and their interprofessional team to come up with an algorithm. So I have done a few different interventions and then came up with an algorithm that got infused with solution-focused language.
So maybe you can just briefly say, when we talk about algorithm, what that means for you.
I know algorithm was a difficult word to swallow for me because it sounds like a formula, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like a formula that you need to follow. And it's not like if A says this, then you say this. It wasn't like that. Algorithm is kind of providing the direction of a conversation so that your focus is finding out what they care about, what they want, and what's important. So my work was around when the patient speaks about, oh, I've been thinking about this. Then probably what you want to get to is, as Chris Iverson says, it's means to an end, right? So it's not about dying. So it's not about problem solving about how to die. But the first question is something like this. What are you hoping to end by dying? And what was so humbling was we got so many different responses, and top 3 being, I want to end pain, I want to end family burden, and I would like to die with dignity. And whatever answers or responses that they came up with, now the professionals are way more informed to be able to sort of support them with different services, because patients didn't even know that what services were available for them. So that was one side effect. But second one is patients were now not being shunned about talking about dying, but they were really supported in what they see as their desire. So I heard a lot of stories that made me wail in my office. But one story that really touched me so much was the patient who was very young and with young kids. And, everyone was quite heartbroken about her decision or her consideration of the process, because we were hoping that she will not choose that. And of course, there's a very strict criteria or eligibility. But after having that conversation, she decided to go ahead with it. And professionals like us, for me, and a lot of healthcare professionals, until it got legalized, we were in the business of preserving life. So first of all, it felt like a personal failure that your patient decides to die after having that conversation. Second is sickly hoping that your goal is not that, and they have some time period in between the decision and the procedure so that they can change their mind anytime. So it was the last day. It was a day of the procedure, and she decided to do that at the hospital. Everyone was so nervous around it because what do you do? Do you say goodbye? I mean, what are you going to say? So then we're kind of avoiding eye contact, and we're avoiding it. And then we heard her sort of holler the name across the hallway. And we all went in hopes that, we should change their mind. And of course, she looked at us and then she said, I'm leaving today. And then, what does that mean anyway? Right. And then she said, I just wanted to let you know that because of those conversations that you've had with me, I am dying with hope. And
Wow.
I can't say this, I can't tell this story without choking up each and every time. And I hear so many stories from this palliative team that is just doing amazing work, working with people who are at the last stages, using solution-focused coaching or solution-focused dialogue. And we've done this poster presentation, and it got awards and all those things. And now that algorithm is being implemented in all the hospitals so that it's being used as a reference or guide for you to actually use with patients who are inquiring about it. And that just has such profound impact, because until then I thought solution-focused dialogue is a lighthearted thing to do. Until that happened, it really meant life and death. As a practitioner, I think I totally matured through that experience. And I do not take this lightly.
Oh, this is such a heart-touching story, and I again had tears in my eyes.
I know, me
And
too. It's just,
it- it's tears for actually both kind of the tragedy of it. Also, I think it's not a tragedy. I mean, this sounds like crazy, but it was her decision, and it's just beautiful to honor a decision of a human being. And the other thing is the beauty of hope, and to die with hope is such a strong, strong statement.
To
And
die with hope. Yep. Yeah. And then somehow it was really constructed in a way that they were having a dialogue. And I think that's why she thanked people in her dying breath. Right. So,
yeah. So you say this event was kind of life-changing event for you, and that you matured out of that. So on a more concrete level, what would you say changed for you?
What changed for me is I actually quit my job because it was just so profound. I mean, I quit my job, but I'm still there teaching and all those different things. You know, concrete things that happened to me is I decided to really pursue what this is, like what it does, what dialogue does. And coaching is one example. Therapy is another example. But, you know, teaching is another way of dialoguing. It's dialogic pedagogy, not pedagogical dialogue. But anyway, the way that I understand dialogue is a lot more profound in a way. And I want to know more about it. I just don't want to be just doing a lot of fun stuff that I usually do. Team intervention is fun, sure. But I want to know that this is actually making a real difference in people's lives. My team knows that because I say this almost daily is I want to see our dialogues change at home. And I want to see that change in schools and at workplaces. And for me to do that, I have a lot of work to do. So tangibly, I left my work, my full-time work, so that I can really study this full-time. So I guess that's one big change in my life.
And study it full-time, what does that mean for you? How does that show up in your life?
Oh, darn it. You know, I didn't think that I would ever do this to my life, but I am just writing a thesis, just looking at how people make sense of the notion of hope in their dialogue using ELAN that, you know, Jan talked about.
We have it on our website, by the way, because it's free software. And if our listeners, if you're interested in ELAN, go to our website. And we will also put the link in this podcast under www.sfontour.com/simplyfocuspodcast, and then go to episode 11.
In a way, ELAN is a free tool, and I think it's because it's free, people don't value that. Come on, it's something that you can download for free. They come with user's guide, so you can really use it to look at your own work.
It's a treasure box, yeah.
Oh, absolutely right. So that's what I'm doing in my thesis, and I was so blessed to see this newest article that came out by Jan, Jennifer, and Sarah on calibration. And I think I read this 7 times. Like every time I read it, there's something new. It's like, what? So, I mean, I've been reading this, and it's such a treasure that I get to see my work with a very specific focus about how you and I are accumulating what we agree on. You know, I think they used to call it grounding, but it's like accumulation of what we agree on as what's happening, our reality. And that's what I'm looking at in my work. And I just really feel like I don't know much about it the more I study it. But I am hopeful that it will come. Because in a way, when I especially see how people kind of come together in such, I mean, what did she say? Every 5 seconds on average, we calibrate. It's so true, isn't it? So in a way, I see how people are constantly just calibrating to each other. And that itself becomes sort of like a thread that goes through your dialogue, right? So anyway, I just can't get enough of it. So that's what I'm doing with my life.
Awesome.
Yeah, next to everything that we believe right now, how solution focus works and what is useful, the 3 of us think that calibration is really, really something that could change or will change the way we see interaction in the future, and also solution focus and what's really relevant in solution focus practice.
Absolutely.
So, Haesun, we talked about the language of hope. We talked about microanalysis and about all the differences all this makes for you in your life and your students, and all the way you changed your life and are, well, writing a thesis now, but
Oh dear.
things like that.
Don't remind me.
Yeah. So what would you say is the most important thing for our listeners to take away from this podcast that might make the biggest difference for them?
There's always another way of looking at it. And you're choosing to look at it a certain way is worthwhile to actually observe. I think as a practitioner, in coaching practice that I have, what I find fascinating is that I sometimes say that coaching is a leaky business because people leak in their dialogue. Practitioners leak their assumptions, and clients leak what they care about. And it's really there always is another way of looking at it. So I really hope that people will relook at the work with multiple perspectives and really discover such joy in that learning.
And the way we look at it makes a huge difference. We see different things, that's for sure. Yeah. Wow. So let's come to the challenge of this week.
I'll go with the challenge that I actually give the people that I teach at hospital, and it goes pretty well usually. The challenge comes from one of my favorite exercises by Peter DeYoung called complaining exercise. I think many of you probably know this. Instruction is you're pairing up so that one person is complaining, the other person is listening for about 5 solid minutes. And then after that, you're giving them feedback on what you heard that the person cares about. So usually the homework is, interestingly, find somebody in your life that seems to complain and sit down with them and really listen to their complaints with a filter. And the filter is, what does this person really care about? Because you will always see that other side of what you thought was complaint. There's always another way of looking at it. And you will hear it the minute you actually have that focus. So, that means if somebody's coming to you and sitting down with you, that means you are the complainer. But anyway, so that's the challenge for you. I would love to hear about how that goes, because that changed my dynamics with my family.
I love this challenge. Thank you so much. It's something I truly can say this changed my life too. Listening in this way, even if there are complaints, and not getting into the complaints and supporting them, but just still listening for the brilliance, or how you put it, like listening for what they really care about. This is profound. And I love to practice it myself the upcoming week as well.
And this connects well to the podcast we did about solution-focused listening, podcast number 6, if you want to go back and listen to that one.
Thank you very, very much, Haesun. It was a great pleasure talking to you. You're a huge source of inspiration for us, and we are very, very much looking forward to meeting you in Toronto this summer.
Oh, yes.
And this is something, we would definitely love to encourage all of you around here in Canada, the United States, or the world. Get your ticket and come to the BRIEFFEST. And maybe, Haesun, you can just say a few words about the BRIEFFEST and what's going on there, what it is. And
sure. BRIEFFEST is this is actually our 9th year of running the summer intensive training. It went through a lot of different editions, but I think it started with slight discontentment that we do brief practice, but for some reason trainings are not brief. So we're offering sort of a brief way of introducing solution-focused dialogues. And as you can tell, we are doing a lot of work inspired by microanalysis of face-to-face dialogue. So I can't wait to actually get started this year, especially because we have a lot more people coming from different countries this year than the previous years. So I'm so looking forward to not only meeting people who are curious about it, but also practitioners who want to relook at their practice through the lens of microanalysis. So that's something that I am totally excited about.
We too. So we're very much looking forward to be there with you. And I think brief trainings can't be that brief, because usually there's this amazing energy and you just want to, keep on doing and practicing and having fun together, enjoy the practice. So,
So it's really, we're learning from each other, learning with each other. And it's a huge learning for me each time. So I'm so looking forward to it.
So Haesun, when does the BRIEFFEST take place this year?
This year, we have two parts. One is summer intensive coach training for the Foundations program, which is from June 21st to 29th. And there are some breaks in between, so don't you worry. And then also in July, we have Train the Trainer. For the lack of better words, we call it Train the Trainer. But it's really more like people who are practicing and teaching solution focus to come together and just inspire one another with co-constructing useful exercises and all those different things. So I think that one is at the end of July. Let me check. July 26th through 31st.
You'll find the website of the BRIEFFEST in our resource section. Just go to episode number 11 of the Simply Focused podcast. And you'll also meet other guests that we had on our podcast so far. For example, Pamela King.
Woohoo! Yes. So I'm quite excited about it because it's a smaller group of people who come together, and you will have that sort of intimate interactions. So it's not like a huge conference, but it's a small enough so that you really will get to learn about each other's practice.
So thank you very much, Haesun. It was really great pleasure having you here on this podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you also for the brilliant challenge. And we are looking forward to hearing from you, dear listeners, how the challenge goes for you, what differences it makes for you if you look for what other people care about and if you listen that way. So please let us know and comment on our website on www.sfontour.com/simplyfocuspodcast and then go to episode number 11. Also, Haesun, you agreed to be there on our website. So if you have any questions for Haesun or just want to share with the three of us what inspired you with this podcast, with Haesun's amazing work and her really heart-touching stories, please let us know and do this not only for you but also for others, because what inspires you might also inspire someone else and might even be the one thing which helps someone else moving on with their solution-focused work or their solution-focused journey. So please comment and let's inspire each other.
Friend power is stronger than willpower. And if you have not yet done, please subscribe to our newsletter and subscribe to the podcast on our website. You can subscribe on iTunes, Blueberry, Google Play, Stitcher, or TuneIn. And there's also the possibility to subscribe and get an email. So just go to our website and subscribe by email, and then you will always get an email when a new podcast episode is published.
We are very much looking forward to hearing from you and also to next week's podcast. Tune in again on Wednesday.
Thursday.
Depending
on where you live in the world.
Tune in again and have a great week. Bye.
Bye.